So tonight on Nova Legends podcast, I want to talk real estate with three great Northern Virginia athletes, guys that I coached two of these guys. Mike Grogan, I coached him in summer league basketball at Robinson, and I don't know if Greg Wells remembers this, but I coached Greg in the 8th grade All-Star game in basketball. He was a really good player, and that's tradition at Robinson High. We play against the faculty. And then Peter Knapp, good buddy of mine, who sold real estate. He sold litigation support, which I do as well, before he got into the real estate business. Peter's said a lot of great things about Greg over the years, how Greg handles himself. And I know Mike has done extraordinarily well down in Williamsburg. Pete's worked with me on several occasions as well. So I'm really glad to see you guys and get you guys on the podcast.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course. Well, let me introduce you guys to folks. First of all, Greg, as I said, Greg went to Robinson, class of '85. He was a good basketball player. That's how I knew him. And like I said, I coached him in 8th grade All-Star. My memory was he was the best player on our team. We had I think it was John Gould, Greg, and a couple others. And but Greg was a really good goalie. He was a 4-year varsity player at Robinson. Went to George Mason, played for Gordon Bradley. Gordon Bradley's a legendary coach. I believe he coached the national team, or at least the Diplomats, I believe.
New York Cosmos.
Oh, the Cosmos. That's what it was. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but Greg got into real estate very early. He's I guess you call him a lifer in real estate. He formed his own team, the Greg Wells team, and ReMax designated them one of the top 100 teams in real estate in the world, which is a huge honor. He's in the ReMax Hall of Fame. 2017, he joined Keller-Williams, and he's continuing to do great there. He's the dean of Belmont, which is a huge planned community in Loudoun County. He's worked with more than 1,000 families in his time. So Greg, again, great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. This will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Well, let's go to my man, Mike Grogan. Now, Mike is a guy. Mike had a great family. His mother was wonderful, beautiful woman, was the best sports mom you could possibly have. And his dad, I believe, was an FBI agent and coached AAU and travel, was a great coach. Coach Mike and his brother Kevin. Kevin was also a really good point guard as well. Mike played for me, played with Dermia Marshall, a great guy that
we all tried to play with Dermia, but Dermia kind of played by himself, if I remember correctly. So
we play among Dermia. But Dermia has just stepped down at West Springfield as the head coach. Now he's at Osborne High School out in Manassas, kind of a good retirement move for him. But anyway, back to Mike. Mike went to Florida State University, and he was a big intramural star there. And once he was done with Florida State, first got into the mortgage business. So I guess he went to the dark side first, and did well there, and then got into the real estate business with joined a group called Berkeley down in a Tidewater or Williamsburg area. Berkeley became William Wood. Now it's Hanna. Mike, as a realtor, was $2 billion in listings, incredible record. In 2014, became managing broker at Hanna. Now he's back as, I guess, a general manager, more in a management role. But again,
yeah, and I'll just tell you, Julian, the $2 billion was my office. I was managing the office, so I can't take credit for $2 billion. And these other two guys were about ready to jump out of the seat. I'm going, how the heck could he have done $2 billion? So yeah, that was my office.
I've learned in life when people give you compliments you don't deserve, just take them, because
I'd take it though, right?
Yeah, because so many times you don't get credit for things that you do. So, but anyway, Mike, great to see you again, buddy.
Thanks, Julian.
Yeah, sure. And my man Pete and I, like I said, we met in the lit support business many years ago. He sold a company called, well, first of all, let's go back to South Lakes. Pete was a golfer in tennis. Any blue blood sport Pete can do.
Right.
Won a state championship at South Lakes, class 91, which I believe is a year behind Grant Hill.
I'll be like Mike, where I'll tell you, our team won, not me.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
I was a contributor, but I was surrounded by very good people.
Yeah, we'll take again. We got, as we get older, we take what we can get, right?
Yeah, but they would kill me.
Yeah. But Peter, you went to William and Mary. I believe briefly you're a paralegal at Watt Teeter because you worked with a friend of mine named Mark Scarlatta, I believe.
Yeah, I was a paralegal right out of school, and that's how I got into litigation
support. And then I knew you there. I sell to law firms as well.
We met.
You sold a successful exit with ProDocs,
Yep.
Then you decided to get into real estate. And since 2006, you've been in real estate. I worked with Pete, and he's such a great guy, works hard, can work with problem clients and stuff as well. So think the world of this guy. My wife does too. Pete, thanks for doing this.
Of course. I'm really, really glad to be here, and it's nice to see you guys too.
Yeah, great. Well, let's talk at first about the challenges of the market. And I mean, there's no secret that interest rates are really high compared to where they were just 3 or 4 years ago. Historically, they're not that high, but I guess we all got used to free money, and now all of a sudden, interest rates are a factor again. So the market I believe, is slowed down. So what are some of the challenges of the present market? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I think generally it's pretty known that just inventory is the biggest challenge right now, is because from a logic perspective, there are just a lot of people out there sitting on very low interest rates. So if they don't have an incentive, a job change, something like that, or a retirement, move into another area, they really have no motivation to move. So that's definitely one of the challenges right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd chime in and say, people sitting on refied mortgages at 2 3/4 and homes that have doubled in value in the last, 10, 15 years. There's just, there's just not a lot of sense in considering a move right now. And people have just gotten, pretty happy with where they're at and content where they're at. And maybe even a little bit of fallout from the last time that the market, took a big dive on us. People still remember that. And for all those reasons, unless you really have a burning desire to move or a burning need to move, you're just not. The other thing that we have in our market, I'm not sure if Mike's got the same thing down in Williamsburg, but we have a real lack of new construction inventory. And that's fairly true for the United States right now. There are some major cities, I think 3 of the top 10 are in the state of Texas right now, that actually do have a good amount of new construction inventory, but we just don't here in Northern Virginia. What we do have is high density, it's condos and townhomes. But if you're trying to move up in this market into a single family home and you're looking for new construction, it's all but non-existent. And that lack of inventory, that we would historically count on, is definitely a big part of the low inventory market that we're in.
Yeah, I got to piggyback on that, Julian. I mean, the new construction has just become such a problem for us, because I think we're NAR, National Association of Realtors, put out a stat recently saying that we're somewhere like 2 million homes behind the pace that we need to be on in order to catch up with the demand that we have for homes right now. And what's interesting is, Julian, you went right after it. And I'll tell you, it's one of the things, our toughest challenge right now is competing or countering the negativity in the market. I will say that, there's actually, you're talking to 3 people who've lived through some tough markets here in real estate. And it's a good market when you can sell houses. We're in a market right now, we can sell almost everything we get our hands on. Oh. But, if we look back 15 years ago, we couldn't sell anything. We'd drop the prices. We'd do everything we could, and we couldn't sell stuff. So that's what I always considered a bad market. I mean, y'all hit it, exactly. I mean, between Pete and Greg, hit the nail on the head that it's an inventory problem right now. That's what we have. And it's a really good real estate market with an inventory problem.
Yeah. And there's a lot of friction I've noticed between buyer perception and seller perception, because the rates have gone up and a lot of buyers think they feel a little hurt. They're like, oh, well, now I have this rate, and they think that they're going to get a lower price on the home, but then the friction's caused by the inventory sort of kicking back on them because there's not that much to buy. So
absolutely
interesting times.
Right.
Yeah. And I would jump in on that and say that for the first time in, I can't even remember, we have seen buyer's remorse in the market because of this. I've had a couple of homes that have been under contract, and then you get into these bidding wars that people are used to, and at some point somebody's awarded the winner, and then all of a sudden they think, oh God, I won, now what do I do?
Reality sets in.
Now they start talking to their lender and start running the numbers, which they should have done, you know, weeks in advance. And they're like, really? I'm gonna have to pay that every month? Then they start thinking about, you know, improvements that the home might need, the fact that they just bid out 10 other buyers and paid X amount of dollars more. And that becomes a big weight that now all of a sudden creates buyer's remorse. And I've seen for the first time where buyers are pulling the plug after they've been awarded, you know, the winner on a multiple offer deal. And that never happened when we were playing with house money, you know. But now all of a sudden that is a new dynamic in today's market.
That's a great point.
And I think almost buyers and sellers just have to go into it with a new mentality now, you know, with the mindset that things are changing a little bit and they've got to keep up maybe a little bit better and have a professional, somebody who's actually trained in how to buy and sell houses. That I think the value of the realtor is probably more valuable right now than it's been in a while. That's a great thing for us because when these deals get tough and get tricky, I mean, they're wearing us out. You know, it's like we're looking at, like Greg says, the fall through rate has become high. You know, it's one of those things where you see inexperienced people that are just letting deals fall apart, and even the best are having it happen sometimes. So, you know, it's just the nature of the environment right now, and trying to set that expectation up.
Right. But if you do want to move and you're motivated to sell, there's got to be some great opportunities as well. Like for example, in my own case, it was a good time for us to move because I had my second child was going to college. My wife has been wanting to move out to Loudoun County. It was a good way for us to get some cash, and in a way that it's all deductible instead of the tax laws had changed. So it made a lot of sense for us to move. And I thought it was great because there was no competition at our price point. Pete and I, with Pete's advice, we timed it pretty well. So there was an opportunity for us. We sold quickly. So aren't there some opportunities also in this market if you're willing to face this 6 or 7% interest rates?
I think, Mike, you made a good point that our value's going up. And in Julian's case, like we all probably do, you have to, when you're looking at a target, not everything's going to be on the MLS. You have to just ask around and say anything coming up. And that's how we got his target home, was just, I found something that was coming on the market. So I think there are two opportunities. Number one, we show our value more, but I think number two, coming up in the next probably 3 to 4 months, anyone who's on the market selling, I think is going to be not desperate, but they're not selling during the traditional calendar time. They're going to be more motivated to move. So I think someone who has the flexibility in the next 3 to 4 months, as we get into September, October, November, and December, those buyers might be able to tilt the scales a little bit in terms of getting a somewhat more desperate situation for a seller. Because if you're going to list your house in September, October, and November, that's not the ideal time of year to do it. And I've been telling buyers, maybe wait a few months now who are flexible. And then, yes, there's less on the market, but less buyer competition. And whoever is on the market is probably in more of a motivational place to sell.
So you're saying buyers are already, the ones who want to sell might be a little desperate already. And that desperation is going to grow as we get away from the spring, which is like the season.
Yeah, I think if you have your house listed in the next 3 to 4 months, because of all the factors we've talked about, you probably have some other motivation. You're moving out of the area, job transfer, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to, you have more of a reason to move. So I think the opportunities for buyers could be a little better in the next few months.
Right. Well, has what sells changed at all over the years? Obviously good schools, location, I guess, but it's any of the fundamentals of real estate, have they changed at all in the last, and Greg is the senior member of the real estate team here. Have you seen a lot of changes in what is actually being desired?
I don't think so. I think, there's ebbs and flows to everything, right? During the crazy times that we saw in the last few years, people would buy anything. So all the rules just kind of went out the door. And now with things getting a little bit more normalized, you are back to the fundamentals, but even the fundamentals were there during the crazy times. People were still looking at schools. They were still looking at communities with amenities, if that was important to them. They were still looking at locational, importances to them. Now people are going back to work. People where people thought they'd never go back to work, now they're getting called back to work. So commuting's now, back in the mindset of some people. I think the fundamentals are basically still there and always will be. Maybe what we've seen in the last few years with remote working has changed some of the locational fundamentals for some people. And I think that's probably here, to stay, which is probably a good thing. Because now people can consider moving out, getting a little bit more space, kind of spreading out, as opposed to in the past where everybody felt like they needed to be, close to the job, and now some people don't have to do that.
I'll jump right on that, Greg. I'm in Williamsburg and Charlottesville. We've got 18 offices with the company I'm with, Howard Hanna, and we're seeing them come down from Northern Virginia. It's more than ever right now that they're saying, okay, I can have my job up around the Beltway somewhere, and they can still actually successfully operate some of these businesses from home. And that's where they're ending up. Is I think our highest referral base right now is out of the Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland market. And because of that, it just shows that they're kind of coming down to us a little bit, where maybe they consider us in the country a little bit with these small towns where I am. But it's pretty consistent. We're seeing that flow from you guys up there.
Good.
Next time you're in Charlottesville, make sure you should look up my son. I got to give him your contact information if you guys can hook up. Pete, what about you? What do you think about are the fundamentals for you the same?
Yeah, I think so. And it's like Greg said, I think overall, you just want to counsel people to basically have your house be the shiny penny. When you're listing it, like what I always tell people is, when I'm listing it, I want it to be the shiny penny, so you get as many people emotionally engaged. And when I'm helping people buy, we want to find the ugly duckling, and we want to find the one where we just say, okay, that one doesn't look that good, but maybe we'll get a little bit of a lower price, but be able to put our own equity into it and then come out of it on top.
I think that's a good point when you're looking for, if you're working for a buyer, trying to look through the crummy photos that are online, and
Right.
maybe even the crummy presentation that exists when you come to a home. People have gotten soft and lazy during a market like we've had, where in a lot of cases, you could do absolutely nothing to a home, flip it on the market, and probably still get multiple offers. But the true professionals know that it's way more than that. How much money are you leaving on the table by not, shining it up and doing a few strategic moves to really make it present nicely without, doing, breaking the bank when it comes to improvements. If you can get a home bid up, 5, 10, 15, my record during the market was 20% on $1 million home, compared to doing absolutely nothing and maybe getting 2 or 3%. I mean, there's a lot of dollars left on the table in some cases. And I think we probably all see it almost on a daily basis as we're looking at, homes online. And so it's still, crucial, maybe not crucial, but it's still really a big importance to prepare a listing correctly, get it marketed correctly, if you really want to maximize the ROI.
Yeah,
I want to say too, both you guys do an incredible job with your videos online. Greg, I follow you on Facebook and some of the other platforms you're on. You just did the one about new construction. I think I saw maybe a few days ago. That was great. And then Pete, I had to look yours up because we hadn't met before, but like just the professional photography that you do definitely sets you apart. And we talk about the value proposition of agents, and even like when Greg, you say that like you're getting 20% over on a $1 million property. I don't hear a whole lot of for sale by owners where that happens. And I kind of smile when I say that, but that just shows, it's like when we're going on these listing presentations and we're talking to our friends and our clients about why we want to maybe set ourselves apart, show them what we can do for them. Usually it's to put more money in their pocket. It's what it is. I mean, when you start looking at that, it should be an easy sale if somebody really wants to look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I want to get back to the investment that you advise your clients to make, because I think it's a very important discussion. But first, let's get back to location a little bit. When we decided to move, I didn't care where we moved as long as the school was highly rated. I wanted like a kind of a luxury townhome, but it was interesting because I didn't care about planned community, but my wife really wanted to be in a planned community. But Loudoun has those. Fairfax County, you don't have a lot of planned communities around. Like I'd have been very happy anywhere in Fairfax County, closer with a good school. But Loudoun County has all these planned communities, and they're really cool. You can walk to the store, you can walk to the movies, you can go to bars, all those things that we don't have in Fairfax. Is that something that you're seeing as a big change in the market? Before there was only, to me, there was Reston. That really wasn't a big deal in Fairfax.
Yeah, out here, I mean, as Greg knows, because he's so big in Belmont. Yeah, it's definitely when you have people coming from out of town or from Arlington, it is just such a different market out here, and it's just a different sort of concept. Where you just have these little planned communities that are part of the whole. And I mean, I've been Lansdowne resident now for 18 years, and I love it out here. And I was a Reston native, so it is a little different because they're just sort of separated. But yeah, people seem to like those sort of things in terms of being in one of those communities. But Greg's definitely the expert over in Belmont, so he can probably expound on the advantages of a place like that, because they have a golf course over there too. Lansdowne does, but Belmont has a totally private golf course.
Yeah, I mean, Loudoun is definitely built on planned communities, no question about it. From the beginning, where Ashburn Village, kind of scratched the map here, and then it turned into Ashburn Farm, and then the Broadlands, and then Belmont, Lansdowne, River Creek. You name it, it goes on. And there's a story to be told at every one of these communities, and there's 3 of them that have golf courses, but those are sort of the anomalies for planned communities. Usually it's the things that you said, Julian. It's the ability to walk to shopping, or walk to schools, or walk to parks or playgrounds, or the local, swimming pool, or, things like that. And, I think most people tend to gravitate to it. There's something in there for everyone, whether you've got kids and the kid type amenities are important, or whether you're an adult and you want to walk to a local restaurant or a local bar because you don't have to drive home after a couple of drinks. There's a lot to be said for planned communities and organization. And I think Loudoun really learned a lot from Fairfax when it comes to infrastructure in general. The biggest thing I think that's noticeable, in addition to our planned communities, is our roadways. Our roadways out here are amazing. When I drive back into Fairfax, I'm just like pulling my hair out because of how bad.
Welcome home.
Is. So that's
Mike. What's it like in Williamsburg? I mean, I went to school there, but I'm constantly amazed when I go back there, and it's been great how it's grown in what I can perceive as a very good way.
Controlled growth all the way is what it is. They're trying to keep a thumb on it. I live in a little neighborhood called Kingsmill, which is, got a few golf courses there. So I've been there for quite a while, kind of bounced around in that neighborhood a few times. But planned unit developments have really taken over our market once you start moving south. Everything from Richmond, Charlottesville, Virginia Beach. I mean, any new construction neighborhood that we have right now is going to be in a planned unit development. We have very few one-off construction opportunities, I would say. The interesting thing is everybody who comes down to us, they all want 5 acres. They're all saying, yeah, put me on the beach or put me on the river, 5 acres, and they give us a price. And then they end up in a planned unit development with about a 1/4 acre and 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, or 2.5 baths. So it's always interesting. I'm sure you guys run into that same thing, but that's definitely our sort of recipe. We always get the same criteria that we need, and we end up right there in a planned unit development when it's all said and done, because, really, I think people don't know that they would like that. Greg, you said, how great is it when you can walk home after a couple beers instead of, calling an Uber or whatever we have to do these days. So,
yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Mike, you mentioned that realtors can really make an impact now, and the value is higher than ever, which is great, because a lot of times, like I know car dealers chips, they complain because all the buyers know everything now. So when you go in there, you can't really talk to people anymore because they always know anything. It's great as a representative of your buyer and also your sellers, you're making an impact. You're making the money, even though you do obviously, want a percentage. But the last time I sold a house and bought a house was 2007, 2008, I believe. I sold a house 2013, but I was shocked at how realtors have changed since then. I mean, stagers. So I know a woman named Jennifer Westbrook. She was a client of mine, awesome woman. And she wanted to quit practicing law to become a stager. This was like back in 2006, 2007. I'm like, well, why don't you just be a real estate agent? It seemed like it wasn't ambitious enough for such a terrific, high paid lawyer, but staging wasn't a thing the last time we sold our house. I mean, that was something the realtor would advise you. Hey, take pictures of your grandparents off the wall, but it wasn't like it is now. Also, Mike mentioned the videos. Like Pete does great videos. I love watching the one on my own house, but Greg as well. Greg's videos are tremendous. I watch all of them. Greg walks into the house like he's the king of Belmont, and I own this place. You could do business with me. So I mean, the realtor has become like this personality. Like, we want to do business with this guy. They're like a social media star now. And there's other social media aspects of being a realtor now. There's the pricing strategy. I thought it's different now. There's Zillow. There's more transparency on pricing than ever before. I'm sure when you guys have those price discussions, the people know much more than they used to, because Zillow says I should be listing for this much. So anyway, talk a little bit about how being a realtor has changed. I know, Greg and Mike, you guys have been in here the longest. I mean, your job is probably a lot different than it was 15 years ago.
The internet's changed it. I say to everybody that the first showing happens online these days. It used to be that, people would call you and they'd grill you on questions about the house. I've been doing it long enough that the MLS used to come out in a book format, and I'd be waiting at the office. They'd hand me the book and we'd go through it really fast and try and find those houses. And we'd all race out there to these houses to try and see them. I think it was Thursdays that they delivered it back when I first started. I still remember that. Every agent would be sitting right there in the office waiting for the books to come. You get them, you look through, like, oh my gosh, you call somebody, and we'd meet them out there at the house, and as a showing, somebody'd have to unlock the door for you. About half the time it'd be on a lockbox. Now these folks, they're calling us up. They can tell us more about the house half the time than my agent knows, or that I would even know. It's a whole different game. They're so much more educated on everything about neighborhoods, homes, schools, all types of different scores that come out. But I'll say one thing, Julian, and then I'd like to hear their opinion too. When you talk about Zillow, at first we all said, oh my gosh, Zillow, it's going to be the end of real estate for the realtor out there. We're not going to need realtors anymore. Well, I think almost, we've kind of leaned into it. I know our company hired a couple of people from Zillow, so we actually subscribe to some of the things that they do, but we used it to build our own, value estimate of homes. And then we even put in our software 3 different models. It's the Zestimate, sure, the Zillow one. We've got one in there from realtor.com, and then we have what the value is on their tax records, and line them up next to each other. And they're always like so different. We're talking about a house that could be $700,000, market value, and one says it's worth $520, one says it's worth $700, and the other says like $850. And, it's like, can we afford to be that far off when we're selling a house? And the answer is no. If I'm off by 5%, my client's ready to just kill me. And to see that they are so different in these estimates, again, just adds value to what we can do, because the Zestimate, the realtor.coms of the world, they're not walking through the house. They don't know that one smells like smoke and one is perfectly updated. It's like there's a whole difference to this thing that we all have to really keep in mind. And I think it's going to keep us in business for quite a while, because every house is so unique.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Technology, the internet, as Mike said, we were in the business before the internet, and it was a lot different back then. Now, with information and and all the television shows that are out there, and how addicted people are to real estate from a consumer perspective, there is a lot of information out there, but then it's deciphering all that information, and that's where the real professionals come in and can stand in front of a client and say, okay, you've got all this information, but let's really pick it apart a little bit here. And let's make sure that you understand that, sites like Zillow and other sites that come up with these estimates of values really have never seen the home before. They're working off tax data for the most part. And a lot of times tax data is incorrect. I mean, we see tax records that are wrong all the time. So if you're basing your Zestimate or whatever you're calling it based on tax data, there could be inconsistencies. As Mike said, you could have a house that is fully improved up against a home that smells like God knows what, and there's huge differences there. In fact, I just came from a home today where arguably it's significantly overbuilt for the neighborhood, but it's going to crush it when it's time to get out there, because I'm going to make sure that these guys, put together a detailed spreadsheet of everything they've done to this home that I'll use in my marketing. And because of the information that's out there these days, if you can lay out this type of data in front of people, I think they can quickly see why you're trying to price a home a certain way. You're not just winging it. You've got a story behind your price. And for certain people, it's going to make sense. For certain people, it might not make sense, but that's okay. You're just looking for the people that really appreciate what's been done to the home. And yeah, it's definitely a professionals market where professionals can sift through all of the data and all the information that's out there and guide a buyer or a seller to success.
Yeah. Great. How about
Julian, I got to say too, we talked about it a little bit before the show, but it's no surprise that Greg's like a phenomenal realtor. He was like the most detailed guy in high school. And I was telling him, that I was like that guy. I was like 3 years behind him, 4 years behind him in school. But watching him, the way that he played goalie for Robinson, and we joked about it, this pre-shot routine he had for penalty kicks. Like everybody in the school knew that he was going to intimidate the heck out of whoever was taking the penalty kick. He'd like walk over to one goalpost and he'd take like, I don't know how long it took Greg. I felt it was like 5 minutes for you to get ready for a penalty kick. But he'd walk over to one goalpost. He'd put his head up. And he's like kind of talking to the goalpost, come back the other side. He'd do the same thing. Then he'd act like he's ready. Then he'd do it all over again. And it was like the most detailed routine that he had. But I mean, it's like listening to him seriously talk about business. It just shows that like the people who take the time to really be detailed and intentional about selling houses, they're actually doing really well at it right now. They're doing phenomenal. And it's just so comforting to hear somebody like that speak. So
well, that
I
goalie
see Pete not into it too.
Well, that goalie routine, Greg does that now at the Belmont gate. When you walk in,
Is that what he does? He walks in and does that.
Greg intimidates him. Like, this is my home.
I'm gonna have to drive up there and actually witness it sometime. I really am.
If you come here, you're gonna have to deal with me.
Yeah, we might have to reenact that someday. And I still have a couple of uniforms that I could put on.
I think Greg actually had a different jersey, like a goalie jersey for every game. I can remember like he was the most decked out guy in the whole region. It was pretty...
He wore stripes a lot. That was my memory, but it's been a while. Did you wear stripes like Greg in the goal?
I did have quite a few outfits. I was
fancy gloves always too. You always the coolest.
I definitely enjoyed that part of being a goalkeeper, that you could wear like cool different stuff.
Yeah. Well, Pete,
it was fun to watch.
You want to jump in on this one?
Oh yeah. No, what I was going to point out is you brought up staging, and then Greg brought up the television shows, and I think that's a big thing that I've labeled the HGTV effect, where every buyer is so conditioned to hearing those buzzwords of bones, granite, quartz, cabin, move-in ready, open floor plan. So on the listing side, you definitely have to cater to that. And I think that's been, at least during my career, one of the biggest changes. And that's why staging took off so much, is because we can't go over to listings and then just sort of say, okay, you got everything here. Everyone's going to realize how you live. You have to, whether it's bringing in furniture or reorganizing what they do, you have to make the buyers see the home at its peak. Because buyers don't realize that most of the time they're going to move in and they're going to live the way we all do. But that's why staging is so important, is because you have to create that almost like the house looks new. And that's why staging has become such a lucrative industry now.
Well, let's stick with staging for a bit. Now, we were looking at houses, and, when I was talking to Pete about this, I saw a couple things out there. There were houses that were sparsely populated with anything, like our house. There's not much left. As you can see, this this room looked completely different about 2 months ago. But I saw houses like this that most stuff was decluttered and things were taken out. Other houses, every room is impeccably crafted. Like you can practically envision a guy next to his fireplace with his pipe and reading his book. You can see it all. It seems like there's different theories about how to stage. Either you want to create the vision for the buyer, or you want to try to declutter and make the place look empty and bigger. Is there different schools of thought to staging?
I think all of those, factor into a good staging job. I mean, making a home feel larger by decluttering it is really the biggest part of staging. But also, making it feel warm and making it feel, inviting. And really what, presentation comes down to is that buyers form an opinion every second they're in a home, and staging can come down to the way the dishes are presented in a cabinet that isn't even open, because they're going to open it, or the closet that's got all the crap jammed into it, after you did a sloppy staging job, and they open up the door, or they open up the garage or the storage room in the basement, and they're like, now I get it, that's where all the crap went.
Found something.
So buyers form opinions every step of the way. I mean, if you look up and see a dirty air filter in the ceiling register, I mean, you're forming an opinion that the people really haven't maintained the property that well. And it's funny, and I'm sure all the guys will chime in and agree with me on this one. Buyers almost turn into like private investigators in these cases. In some cases, they want to know who's selling the home. Mm-hmm. So sometimes stagers will come in and completely strip the face off of the home. They'll take every personal photo out of the home. They'll take everything out. And sometimes that actually befuddles a buyer, because they turn into private investigators in the home. They're like, who lives here? I want to know who lives here, but they also form opinions, based on what they see throughout the home. And it's every step of the way. Like I said, it's all the way down to what does it look like inside a cabinet drawer, to, what the storage areas look like, what the garage looks like. It's really important to do it right. And when you do, you're going to knock it out of the park.
Are you guys finding that we're like really getting back to the basics, like the stuff that we were using maybe 2-3 years ago? I'd say 3-4 years ago, like staging. I mean, I feel like we got to a point where we didn't need it as much when it got so busy, but now we're right back at things like that. Even the good pictures, the staging, all that. Are you all seeing the same thing?
Yeah. I'm going to steal this from you, Mike, but when you said the first showing is online, I'm going to use that one. That's that's something that I find myself needing to remind sellers that, yes, you're presenting the home for when people walk into it, but it's also they're looking at it online, so they're seeing the pictures. So it's almost like a double effect of when things were crazy, people thought anything should sell. But like Greg said earlier, I think in any market you do the same thing. But I do remind them when you get some kickback, which we all do, about investments, things like that to put into the home, you tell them, you say, look, this isn't just when they're walking in, this is when they're making the decision to go walk in.
Yeah.
And then Greg, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, I feel like we followed our formula even through the best of markets, because we were always trying to maximize the ROI. Yep. As I said earlier, and you do that by preparation, by marketing, by pricing and strategy. About the only thing that I think we have changed a little bit is the amount of money spent on preparation. Back when homes took a year to sell, you had to do a lot more. You don't have to do as much right now, but you still have to do some things. It still can't feel like it's a major project that somebody's taking on.
Yeah,
especially now with the rates the way they are and the prices being still very, very high. It almost feels like, because of the rates and because of the prices, that we are back to pre-COVID staging and improvements, because if somebody's going to pay this money, and take out these rates, they're going to have to really feel good about what they're doing, or they're going to bail on you.
And making a move in ready.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point because they're already a little hurt by the interest rates and how much they're seeing a month. And then if they're moving in thinking, oh, then I have this big project to do, they're more likely to get back to that buyer's remorse concept that Greg said he's been seeing more of.
Well, I want to get back into the investment that you guys have to advise clients about, because it's very important. But we mentioned, and Mike had referenced both you guys' videos, and I watch all the realtor videos because they're fun, they're interesting. There's always great music, and I guess there's companies that produce these for you guys. You don't have to do it yourself anymore. What is the role of that video? Like when Pete did ours, our house was practically sold before it came out, and obviously most of the people are going to see your listing pop up in the area they're looking for. They're going to be all over it. The video is not going to have that much of effect, but it's still a really cool item, and it really elevates your guys's, your social media impact, which is important. What exactly do you guys see as a role of those videos?
One thing that I've learned, and it's happened, is where when I put it on Facebook or Instagram, and then in Loudoun County and Fairfax County, Northern Virginia, I'm sure you guys all know, everyone just seems to know each other. They all have friends who've seen it. So I had a couple of occasions, two actually during COVID, where someone saw my video and then didn't see it online. They sent it to someone they knew, and then that person, called us and they ended up buying the house. The other thing that's happened is other realtors who might not have seen it, I don't know why they didn't see it because it was on the MLS, but then they saw it and they showed it to someone else. So for us, it's sort of the two-pronged thing where we want to, I will tell you this, full disclosure wise, I came a little bit after Greg. And as I was coming up in my career, Greg was one of the people where I looked up at, and I was like, he's always in a suit, or it looks good, he's professional, etc. So for us, it's been a really good way of doing that professional branding when we're at a home. And then it has the obvious intended effect of more eyeballs on it. And as we know, you don't know where people are going to see it. You don't know who's going to share it, but the more eyeballs see your home, the likelier they are to come over, the likelier they are to make an offer and sell it.
Yeah, I think the branding is really big. It is a branding thing. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Mike,
I think it's it's great for the agent. It shows that you are a professional. It shows that you care and that you're investing in the marketing, and that you really care about representing your sellers. And so as people are looking at homes for the first time online, there are people out there that are auditioning agents, at the same time. They're like, hey, when I go to sell, I want my house to look like that, so that's going to be a guy I consider. So it's very important. And what we've, had the luxury of seeing here in the last few years is multiple offers. And, the better your marketing is up front, the more offers you're going to get, the higher you're going to get the house to get bid up, and the more money you're going to put in your seller's pocket. Really, that's what it comes down to. So it does matter. And people that take shortcuts and, cut corners on their marketing and put their sellers in, less than top-notch positions, they're really doing a disservice to their sellers.
Yeah, a guy like Greg or Pete, you look at it, they're using their listing to get the next listing. We always look at it that, in the business, we think a listing should lead to probably two more. That's if you're really putting your best foot forward, it's going to bring business in the door for you. That auditioning for the next seller, that's just so on point, Greg. I think that's exactly what every good agent should be doing right now is exactly that.
I think so too. Most of the time, Pete said he got lucky a few times, but I think it is, and it's a great branding. It's really, and it kind of fits into the HD TV. We like to watch shows about houses and real estate, and this in a environment of short attention spans. Your videos are the perfect time. It's 2-3 minutes. We can see this, this nice house, and it's outfitted perfectly, and it gives us ideas of ourselves. Let's get back to the investment that you have to make. Now, we've talked about the investment that you guys make in staging and improvements. And as Greg said, get in the house in as best form as possible so you can make the most money that you possibly can. Are those conversations calibrated to the financial situation of the seller. Obviously, most guys in a $1 million home in Belmont can spend money, but some might be selling because they don't, they're not in a position, they don't want to spend too much money. Is it one of those things where there are times where this house looks pretty good? I think we can get away with not doing everything. We can probably put some paint on this house and still do it. I mean, are those conversations calibrated to the particular buyer and maybe even the listing? I mean, seller and even the listing?
They're tough conversations, as I think we'll all agree, because I always pepper in a little bit. It's easy for me to say, because I think bedside manner, as you get more experience, is something you have to have as a realtor. Because I've heard horror stories from a lot of clients where realtors just kind of come in and say, you have to do this, you have to do that, and turn them off a little bit. And I think that what I always do is just say, look, this is a team situation. I say, I'm going to make this really easy. If I owned your house, I would do X, Y, or Z. If it were my money, if I were doing it, then you take that and you fit it towards the factors you're talking about, like their budget, things like that. But I think I've come a long way in terms of, I'm generally a people pleaser. I've always been in service industries. And one of the biggest sort of steps forward I've taken is I might say things that I know they're not going to do, that I know that they might not like, but I'm not earning my commission if I'm not straight honest with them. And like Greg said earlier, you just have to create the shiny penny. And even during COVID, that was, as you guys probably experienced, that was the biggest kickback I got, was we can just put this on the market and we're going to get $1 million. But what we as professionals coach them to do is, okay, well, you could put 25 grand more and you can get $1,075,000 or 1.1. And that just goes every single time.
Yeah, and as Pete said, sometimes these are tough discussions, especially if you're sitting across the table from somebody that you can probably sense doesn't have the wherewithal to spend the money. But once again, it comes back to being a professional and being able to not only give professional opinion but also give examples and maybe even market data of how spending a little bit will make you fivefold on top of that. I use the old saying, you got to spend money to make money, and it's true. Spend 10, make 50. Most people get that pretty quick, and and when it comes to giving advice about what to do, it's not one size fits all either. Of course, I mean, price point goes into that. Competition goes into that. Expectations within a certain area go into that. There's so many factors that go into it that the experience that guys like us bring to the table, versus people that have only been in the business for a year or two. There's really not a lot of comparison.
Mike, are you having these same discussions down in Williamsburg?
I feel like so. And there's Greg just said it, so many different factors that go into selling a house, that you start off with the money, but then there's hot buttons that come up for a seller. It might be the timing of it, that they say, I've got to move within a certain period of time. And then that's our job to execute that plan. We've got to come up with a plan, I feel like, really, that gets them where they want to be in the time frame they want to hopefully maximize the money that they're going to get out of their house. But there's just so many things that factor into it. The good realtors ask good questions. And when you're getting that good information, that's where I think Pete said it. It's like coaching, and it's like, I tell you, I mean, that's sort of my passion. I've done a lot of coaching in my life, whether it be in business or in sports. And if you're coaching these people, you're trying to figure out how to really help them out, and that's what it all comes down to, is we're trying to be their helper, their advisor.
Greg, you made a great point too, that I don't think a lot of people think about, is you made two things you mentioned were data, because you can say something to someone, but until you put those numbers on a piece of paper and show them proof of it, that's when their minds sort of shift. But also competition, because one thing we'll do it, because at a different price points, you want to do different improvements. You don't do the same improvement on a high level or a high dollar house as a low dollar one. But more importantly, and sometimes you might, but more importantly, we show them other comparable houses. And so if 3 other comparable houses are $1 million and they all have new kitchens and there's a dozen, then obviously that's going to be a hot button. But it goes the other way, where you don't want to advise someone to redo their whole inside when their competition, that you're almost going to over improve their inside, and then you're going to cost them money.
That's interesting.
Definitely.
Well, guys, what about the neighborhood specialists? Now, I when I was making the decision to move, I remember I talked to my friend Laura Merrill, and she just bragged about you got to talk to Greg Wells. Oh, Greg Wells, Greg Wells is my boy. But if you're going to Belmont, you talk to Greg Wells. We talked earlier about Pete heard of a listing that was off market that we ended up hopefully we'll close it on this week. That was an advantage you guys have of being in the community. And, Mike, I'm sure in Williamsburg, this is a factor that you see as well. But if I went to you guys and say, look, I want to buy a $1.5 million home in Chantilly, or I want to list mine, you guys would jump in and do a great job for me too. So I it's one of those things, neighborhood specialist is only important if you're the neighborhood specialist. So how important is a neighborhood specialist? Do you really need that? Or on this day of Zillow, when Mike says the first listing is online anyway, do you really need to have a neighborhood specialist?
I'll speak to it because I don't have a neighborhood that I really specialize in. I grew up around here. I go by a lot of referrals and things like that. And I think it is important, because it just kind of makes common sense. Like, you see everything that's going on. You see all the idiosyncrasies if you live in the neighborhood, et cetera, because I've successfully helped clients buy and sell houses all over Northern Virginia. But, in Lansdowne, I just know everything going on a daily basis. Plus, you just get, Greg's the perfect example of it. He sells houses all over Loudoun, but he knows Belmont better than anyone. And one other thing too that I've learned too is from a sort of quality of life standpoint too, it has advantages selfishly, because all the houses are close. You can, if there's ever an issue at a house, you can get right over there, et cetera, et cetera. But I think probably I can speak for all of us where we can buy or sell a house everywhere, but being a neighborhood specialist is important.
No doubt. And I'll tell you, I do it something a little bit different now too, Julian, because I'm involved with training agents that are getting in the business. And that's one of the recipes, I think, for success. If you don't have that, the time in a certain area in your market, you can speed up the process by what we do called farming. We all, the three of us, know the term very well, but
Like that for
Julian, by the way, you'd be a great realtor. I think we need to talk about this. All three of us are going right now. Yeah. Julian could do really well with us.
We've talked about it.
I'll come join the team, guys. Put me in, coach.
Maybe this is an audition and we just don't know it. But
be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. They make me get back those baseball cards I got from years ago, and I'm not doing that, by the way, Julian. So
I'm gonna let you finish, and we're going back to those baseball cards. But I'm gonna let you finish. Go ahead. Yeah.
But I was gonna say the farming is a way to get new agents involved really quickly. I think that's one of the few ways that we can almost guarantee that they're going to have success. They find an area that they're relatively familiar with and passionate about it. Maybe like the houses in that area, and we have to kind of be strategic in identifying that area they become an expert in. It takes a lot of time, but it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that, clients want to know that they're working with somebody that's an expert in an area, not a novice. I tell people all the time, I say, look, I grew up in Fairfax, but you know what? I don't sell real estate in the neighborhood that I grew up in, because I don't know anything about the real estate in the neighborhood that I grew up in. I know how to get there. I probably still remember, some of the models from 1972 when I lived there. But, I've always come from the, position of being an expert in a small area as opposed to a novice in a big area. So whether you've got, one community that you're farming or, a geographic area that has a handful of communities that you're focusing on, when you can walk, when you meet a buyer for the first time or a seller for the first time, and it becomes very clear that you know the ins and the outs of these homes and these neighborhoods, you're two steps, in the door and on your way to attaining your next client. And if you can't do that, it goes the other way pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm working with some out-of-town buyers right now, and they're looking in Leesburg and Purcellville, where I do the majority of my business. And I was with them 3 days, and I would have been out of luck if I didn't know everything about this area. You know what I mean? Because there's that's where this shopping center is going to go, or that's where the best restaurant is, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people don't realize that it's important to know the neighborhoods on the list side, but it's even more important on the buy side because, you know, they usually don't know a lot about the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Totally right.
I want to get back to Mike Grogan and the baseball cards story. So Pete hooked me up with a guy named Joe Jenkins from My Guys Moving, great guy. And he were getting my move ready. And he's been on vacation lately. I said, I haven't been able to set up my move. I'm like, Joe, where you been? He said, I was in Chicago. I like baseball. I was at a baseball card convention. I was like, baseball cards? I'm talking to this guy, Mike Grogan, tonight. He ripped me off. I was giving him rides to summer league games. He saw that I had all these baseball and basketball cards. And he said, hey, coach, you need those cards? They're probably in your way. I think you paid me like $20 for like 1,000 baseball cards back then. And I said, sure, you can have these cards. I mean, they're horrible.
But it's like we all said, the stories definitely get better with time. But yes, I do have your baseball card collection, and I have not even opened it up since you gave them to me, because I know if I do, when I find that George Brett rookie card in there, I'm gonna want to do something with it. So right now they're still sitting in my attic, all boxed up. I think it even has your name on the box, if you can believe that. So yeah, thanks, Julian. It might be my retirement. I'm hoping.
Well, it was just so funny because that was today. He brought it up. I was like,
yep.
Baseball cards.
I'll tell you, hey, Julian, you know that I actually sort of have like a remote tie to Pete here too. You know, my last high school basketball game was at South Lakes.
Nice.
And it was against Grant Hill. He was a junior. I think in the regionals. No, it had to be like early regionals, not semis, probably just like the first round of regionals. And we're playing them. And I, played quite a bit in the game, come out sometime in the fourth quarter, but I'm a senior. So coach puts me back in, kind of wrapping up the game. And I don't know, I'm thinking the game's over. South Lake's kicking our tail. And I'm just bringing the ball up the court. And Grant, of course, was playing point guard still, at South Lake's only 6, 7 or whatever he was playing point guard. Picks me, turns around. I go back like I'm going to do something to Grant Hill. Like I'm actually going to be able to defend him. Kind of one of those ones where you're looking up. I'm so glad that kids didn't have phones at the game. And it's like Grant jumping over me with about 30 seconds left to dunk right on me. And it's like one of those things, a lot of friends still hold that against me to this day, that I came back in that game, and a South Lakes guy at the time, nobody knew exactly what he was going to become, but just embarrassed the heck out of me. So there you go, Pete. You got me on that one for sure.
Well, that's a big, I think I've told Julian this, the big secret about Grant was he was a really pretty good soccer player. He played sweeper on the 72 team growing up. And then
I had no idea about that.
Yeah. He was on, I think they were the Flying Tigers. They're like the Reston Flying Tigers is what they were called. If my old memory serves, but yeah.
Oh.
Guy.
Grant being good in soccer surprises nobody. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about life of a realtor, and I know this is going to be great. I want to hear Mike's ideas about training young realtors. I talk to lawyers a lot, but I'm not saying we're getting older, guys, but retirement is not that far away, at least retirement age. But it seems like a lot of the things that you guys do is very comfortable in terms. I know you work hard, but it's fun. It's fun helping your clients sell their homes. It's fun helping them find the home of their dreams. I'm sure there's a lot of agony and a lot of sadness when you miss out on a bid or when it doesn't go well, but there's some great days. Is being a realtor a job you can do, past retirement age and you'll enjoy doing?
I'll jump in on it, I guess, and let these guys hit it too. But I feel like it's got to be a full-time gig. You've even heard these two guys talk about it. They're experts in their field. There's definitely a way that you could do it through retirement, that you could maybe a little more coasting in it, but that's not in my DNA. It doesn't sound like it's in Peter Gregg's either. I think I'm going to have a day I retire, and that'll be it. I'm not going to be doing this stuff. I'll tell you, it can be a very stressful business. It's very rewarding. So I think why a lot of coaches get into it, because it's so much like that when you're coaching people to actually get to, or to achieve a goal, that's pretty neat. And it kind of makes most people who enjoy that feel good inside. That's what keeps us going. I mean, I'll tell you, I get to talk to a lot of groups of realtors these days. And one of the things that I talk about is sort of rekindling that fire, that you've got to be excited about it again, because it's gotten stressful. When we have that buyer's remorse, which we've seen a little bit, where people are backing out of deals for reasons that we hadn't seen before, we have to find ways to keep our our counterparts, our realtors engaged, where they're excited about it, that they're coming to work with that sort of fire in their belly that the client can really read into. And that's who they want to deal with. They want to deal with somebody who's got a little bit of energy, that has knowledge, and goes out there and actually gets the deal done at the end of the day. So that's where I stand on it. How about you guys?
I agree with the energy for sure. I think one of my lines that I kind of never forget is one that Brian Buffini uses, and that's people buy people's energy before they buy products and services. So you know, if you're not fired up and energetic and raring and ready to go, yeah, people will sense that. And you know, and when you can get them excited and be just as fired up as they are, you know, I think that means something. Going back to your question, Julie, about retiring and dialing it down and, you know, all those kind of things. You know, it is a great business long term, because, you know, when you've done it as long as we have, you know, you build up this database and this referral base of past clients and people that you've served and people that know you and trust you and would gladly refer people to you. And now, you know, I'm showing my age here, but I'm starting to help some of the kids of people that I, you know, served 25 years ago. And these millennials that are buying their first homes, and their parents are calling me up and saying, you know, hey, you know, my kid's about to buy his first home. Will you take care of them? And, you know, there's a lot of satisfaction in that. You know, as you get older in this business, you can become more selective. You know, one thing that's tough for young agents right now is the fact that, you know, with, you know, the numbers of transactions being down significantly nationwide, there's just not that much to go around. And they don't have that big database that they can tap into of people that, you know, are going to, without question, you know, call them, refer them, and so on. So I think, you know, real estate's always been more of a long-term game than a short-term game, career-wise. Having said that, I have seen some young people come into the business, and with the age of social media and some new techniques that are out there, I've seen some youngsters come in and do very, very well with it. But you know, me personally, you know, I've kind of, you know, grinded hard, built up a big business, then decided to break it down and downsize it and reorganize it. You know, I'm doing the amount of transactions that I want to do. I'm freeing up more time personally to spend with family, and, you know, I'm a grandpa right now. Gonna be grandpa number 2 here within like a week or so. You know, so your priorities change and your life changes, but real estate, it's a great business. It really is. And you know, helping people achieve their goals and live out their dreams is something that really is very, very rewarding, and something that and I'm sure all of us will say is a big part of our careers.
Hey, Pete, I'm gonna let you in there right in a second, but Greg, you recently became an associate broker. What is, I don't understand what that terminology means. What does that mean in relation to a real estate agent?
Well, a broker's license is a higher level of licensing than a salesperson's license. A broker's license enables you to do some things that you just can't do as a salesperson.
Okay.
There was talk, I don't know, half dozen years ago about agents that actually lead teams being required to have their broker's license, because really you're kind of running a small brokerage when you're managing a team. That hasn't really played out at the state level yet. But as I was leading a team and as I was, you know, growing a business, I felt like it was important for me to show the people that I was leading that I was committed to education and committed to the business. And so that was the logical step for me to get my broker's license. And the associate broker title is a title that's given to somebody with a broker's license. That's not a principal broker or a managing broker in a brokerage. So when you have larger brokerages with hundreds of agents within them, There's always a handful that have their broker's licenses, but they don't have any responsibilities to the brokerage. So they are referred to as associate brokers.
That's fascinating. Thanks, Greg. Pete, did you want to talk about, I mean, you're too young. Actually, you and Mike are a little bit young to be talking about retirement, but how do you feel about the, representing your clients and stuff? And as you think about retirement, and it does get kind of intoxicating having these relationships with people. And then they're, as Greg says, their kids are going to you as well. It's kind of hard to leave that behind.
Yeah. And I think I'm in the process of almost preparing for it, where team size wise, what I have right now is I have an operations manager and an agent, and then a couple other agents coming on board. But what I really like doing is obviously dealing with clients, but also think, like Mike, you said, I like coaching. So one thing I'm looking to do, I think one of the dysfunctions of our industry is that new agents, what do? They just come on board and they're just kind of thrown into stuff. So what we've set up is sort of like kind of a trial model, but it works, is you bring newer agents onto your team. And one of the challenges is that I think we all know is if you get an agent on your team that wants to be on their own, eventually they're going to be on their own. They're going to go out on their own probably. So what I've had some success with is just planning newer agents come on board, stay with us a year or two. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of teaching them how to be really, really good realtors. And then almost setting that expectation of, okay, after a year or two, can I create a world big enough on our team to make you stay? Or do you want to go out on your own? And I think that a lot of realtors, and I've done this, where you do a team and then someone comes on board and they're almost surprised someone leaves. Where I've had more success adjusting that through some coaching, which is, no, just teach them, be their mentor, teach them how to, be really, really good realtors, because I think that gives me a lot of satisfaction as well, because I know if they stay on my team, I'll have a good realtor, but then if they leave my team, we'll have another good realtor, and that's important.
Well, Mike, when you're training realtors, if Pete and Greg, if a seller can have Pete and Greg represent them on their $1.5 million home, there's so many decision points that you have to think about. It's kind of hard to resist an experienced realtor. So where do you point your young realtors? Is it to the rental market, try to build a rental portfolio, or maybe the lower cost market, or the young buyers? I guess the young buyers, they're buying the condo in Fairlington. I don't know if you remember Fairlington, Mike, but they're buying the younger, the more inexpensive models that are trying to ramp their way up to the $1 million home. So where do you point these young realtors?
We start with data. That's exactly, I mean, Greg talked about it with clients, but we start with data with the agent too. And the agent needs to find their place. There's always a spot in the market that you can find that maybe is not as sought after by the experienced agent out there as it could be. And because of that, there's always that opening in it. Now, I'll tell you too, I tell the new agents that one of the best things about a tough market is that it opens up a lot of opportunities for them, because so many experienced agents don't want to do these things that we're talking about Pete and Greg doing. Like talk about open houses. I said getting back to basics before. Agents that are doing open houses right now are actually picking up clients because they're very frustrated with some of their buyers' agents. They're walking in and our agent says, "Are you working with an agent?" And they say, "Well, and it's like, okay, you get that straight, we'll talk." But a lot of them are saying, "No, we're not. We do not have a realtor. We want somebody to help us." And it's so hard right now dealing with buyers because you're going to lose out on a couple offers, very possibly, unless you're going in super aggressive right from the start. And it's challenging when a lot of the competition they're up against gets tired. It opens up a gap there where new agents can actually get into it. And if they're doing good things, maybe using some of the technology that Greg mentioned, they've got a leg up on some of us old guys that we maybe aren't as comfortable with. There's definitely some spots for them.
That's a great point, because when we were doing some open houses, and people was like, "Julian, don't worry about what you're going to buy yet, because you don't know where you're going to be. It's going to take some time." So we try to get our feet wet a little bit with the whole area. And I was surprised how these agents, they would text you within 5 minutes of leaving the open house. It was a little bit creepy, but after a while I got used to it. I mean, I was like, yeah, this is their opportunity. They're trying to get, represent buyers. So yeah, I guess that is one way for a young agent to meet people out there and hustle at open houses.
And
yeah, Julian, when you get started, Julian, you're going to do great open houses. I can tell already. You're going to be perfect at it. So
yeah. Oh,
And one thing I noticed when I started was that I had, like Julian said, worked in the litigation support business. So when I started with real estate, one of the hardest things was I just figured all the people I knew would use me to list their houses. And I learned that people, when you go to list their house, they ask how many houses have you sold, and you have to have data to prove that. So it was a little easier to pick up buyers than it was listings at that time. And so what I found is some of the younger agents we have coming on our team, one of the advantages specifically to joining a team is that if they have people that say, you've never listed a house, then they just say, oh, I know, but Pete does all our listings with me. So that's a big advantage that I've noticed for new agents, that we actually sort of point that out to them, that if you join our team, you're not starting from zero, you're inheriting all our numbers. And if there's someone, even if, a family member, what might say, well, Joe is getting into real estate, but he's never listed a house. That new realtor then can say, well, yeah, but our team has, and I'm going to have Pete with me. It's going to be tag team all along the way. And I think that's important for newer agents.
Yeah, I think that's a real good point that Pete brings up there. I think the other thing that I would throw in there is just the millennial demographic. It's the largest buying demographic that's out there right now, and so an opportunity for young agents to to work with their age group and their friends, and that's a really good way for a young agent to start.
Yeah. Well, what about the importance of team? Now, like you look at Pete, some of his promotional stuff, he looks like, Donny Osmond with these beautiful, talented women behind him, backing him up, like the old grown up version of the Osmonds. And Greg,
I didn't even notice that. I did not notice that in this picture. I don't think.
And you have the Greg Wells team, it's an award-winning team. I mean, so we have these strong teams. In the law, we have solo practitioners that go off on their own. They keep their expenses low. When they make a sale, they get all the money. Can you make it on your own? You have to be part of a team. Are you better and stronger as a team?
I think it's funny because I guess 17 years I was on my own for about 6 or 7 years, and then I formed a team, and so I've seen the challenges and everything. But my 2 cents is, Greg, how many people are on your team right now?
I'm down to 4.
Yeah, and so I think Greg and I have always been pretty like-minded. At least I have thought about building, a bigger team or whatever, and it's just I have a very, and Greg with his goalie stories probably feels the same way, but I have a very specific way I like to do things. Julian will tell you, I just think we should be available 24/7 to our clients. I think that with the advent of texting, obviously many years ago, but it's today, I'm very specific about how I think things should be done. And so I say that because I just think a smaller team, it basically the size of the team is reflective of the team leader. I think with every person you add, you have more firepower to how many people you can serve, but you also run the risk of the quality potentially going down. So I think that it's individual what people like, but I think at least my comfort level is always, someone doing operations, which helps clients because they have the backup of them, and then other agents that can help them. But I think that I personally will grow, but probably not, I like that 5 to 10 area.
Yeah.
Greg's always done the same thing. He's had a tremendous amount of success. So,
well, I built a team that got up to as big as 11 at one time, and I got to the point where bigger wasn't better for me. The ROI just wasn't there. The amount of time spent, was tremendous. And so, as Pete said, it really does come down to the team leader and, their desire, and their skill set when it comes to building and managing, and all the other, traits that you need to have. I know some very successful team leaders that have built big businesses, and I know a bunch of people that are, somewhere in between, and some that are like me that did it and didn't think bigger was better, and then reorganized it down to a more manageable number. I think I do think that a small team can always outdo an individual, just
Yeah.
because, you know, you can't be everywhere at once. You're gonna need support. And you're not, you know, I very rarely run into agents that can wear every hat that's required in this business and wear it well. So, you know, whether you need help with an ops manager or whether you need, you know, somebody to do your social media or somebody to do your marketing, or an agent or two to pick up the slack when, you know, when you can't be running around all over the place. I think those are some of the key, you know, entry points to running a small team that are important.
Mike, down there, do you guys have big, small, medium? What have you seen?
You know, well, I work for a little different type of company because we're a big company. We provide a lot of support. We have a lot of full-time employees that are doing a lot of the, you know, I always call teams like there's producers and consumers on a team usually. And we have a lot of those sort of consumer roles that are covered. So you get our teams forming where we just have specifically buyer's agents because we don't need transaction coordinators necessarily. So that's just the model that our company subscribes to. It's been, you know, fairly successful, but we get agents then that can produce at a high level with less team members, maybe less expense. And then we just have a little different split structure for those teams so that we make sure that we keep everything equitable for the ones that are bringing in that extra business for us.
Yeah.
These guys are team experts. I'm far from the team expert because, like I say, there's so many different models in real estate, and we're kind of on the other side of it, being a larger company.
Well, expert, that's the thing.
Y'all sound good.
There's a lot of failing forward.
Yeah.
You know, where you just try different things out. And I think that Greg and I being of the like mind is almost like if you are picky and you do care a lot, you create more work for yourself because you want things to be perfect. And I think that's why we both have sort of landed on the smaller side of things. And I think it's all just what the team leader, what their goals and their visions are.
So Greg made a high profile move to Keller-Williams from ReMax, and I know Pete has also changed brand. What do you call the overall brand, like Compass? What do you call that? The brokerage. And I know Mike has basically been at the same one. I guess it's been through two different mergers, but you've really been at Hanna. It was Berkeley and William Wood, but you've been there. How important is the different brokerages? I mean, can you have the same level of success? Does it mean more to the employer, to the realtor, or does it mean more to the the consumer of the services? I mean, could you guys have had the same success if you shuffled the brokerages?
I think so. I think successful people are going to be successful regardless of where they are. You know, this is probably the best thing about real estate. It's what you make it. And if you're going to go at it, you're going to invest in it, you're going to put your dues in, and you're going to use your company for every bit of resources they provide you, whether that's a lot or a little, and then figure out where you've got to kind of fill in to be, you know, really competitive. That's the beauty of real estate. You can figure that out. You can build your own model. And there's everything from, you know, the mom and pops in our town that have just one or two people. And there's somebody like our company that, you know, just here in Hampton Roads, we've got, I think it's about 400 agents right now and 18 offices. So, you know, I mean, I'm on the road constantly. And even within each office, our model changes just a little bit because it's different from market to market. When I'm going from Charlottesville to Virginia Beach, it's like night and day. I mean, we're talking about so much variance there between those two markets. And that's something that, you know, we just have to figure out and provide when we're a larger company. But I think that, you know, also just being that localized specialist is probably going to be the ultimate goal for any realtor in any company.
And I would say it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it depends on the kind of support services. You know, Mike's running a business model where he's offering it sounds like a bunch of support services to his agents, and that can be really attractive. When I moved from ReMax to Keller-Williams, probably the number one reason that I moved my team was for the award-winning training that Keller-Williams has in their back pocket. Not only you know, the best in the real estate industry, but, you know, has won awards against, you know, Fortune 500 companies, and You know, I had all the responsibilities of doing all the training myself at ReMax. ReMax didn't really support new agents and new agent training. And so I think, you know, every brokerage has got a different model and different services that they provide. You know, and every agent's got a different idea of you know, what's right for them, you know, whether you want to be affiliated with a big brand, big national brand, or whether you think that you'll just get swallowed up in a big brand like that and you'd rather be, you know, a big fish in a smaller pond, or maybe even start your own brokerage at some point once you get to that level. It really just depends on the individual. And I think, to Mike's point, you can be successful, you know, in any different model. It really just comes down to you know, what the individual wants and what their you know, what their comfort level is, you know, in choosing a brokerage.
Pete, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I've moved around a fair amount, and I'm just the type of person that if I think there's a better opportunity, I'm going to take it, that I can serve my clients better. And then I look back, and my production, frankly, just hasn't wavered that much when I've gone to different brokerages. So I think internally, Greg made a great point that you learn what you want to do with your business and your team. And then you look and you say, okay, is this place geared towards that? You know, there are a lot of brokerages you can go to. And do you want to be just a luxury specialist? Just a luxury specialist, that's it. Well, then you would probably go a certain place. And I think it's just a matter of at this point in our careers, you know, Greg's probably the same way. I go probably 90-95% referral. So if someone refers me, they're not asking what brokerage are you with. But when you're trying to, like I was saying earlier, use a technique like farming, where you're meeting people you don't know and trying to say, use me, then you get more of a consumer look at, okay, which brand. But I think for the most part, not for the most part, I totally agree with what Mike said, where if you work hard and, you know, you do the right things, wherever you're going to be successful.
Yeah. Well, guys, what about, and we're winding down here, what about COVID? What are some of the things, the legacy of COVID in terms of the real estate market? I could think of one. Pools. I remember 5 years ago or so, a pool was a 50-50. Some people liked him, some people didn't like him. You never knew how it was going to break. After there was a house down the street from here. I think it was like 1,900 square feet. Beautiful brand new pool and 3 bedrooms. It went for like 1.6 like within a day. It was unbelievable. It was this tiny house. And the pool was so gorgeous that these people just had to have it. So I think that might be one legacy. But have you guys seen other legacies of COVID? Maybe it's the way settlement's done, closing's done, or whatever.
My biggest one I would point out would be space, because it made it so during that window, that and interest rates, everyone said, I need a home office. So that was all these different factors were coming together that made it so crazy. But yeah, because then you had someone who was driving to work or whatever, and all of a sudden 1 or 2 people would need more space in their home. So that combined with interest rates, that was just a factor like we've probably never seen over a 2 or 3 year period to motivate people to move. And we could use more of them right now.
Yeah, I think we saw the need for home offices. Yeah. We saw the need for 2 home offices, and then people got silly and said, well, I'm never going to be able to go to the gym anymore. So I need a home gym, and I'm never going to be able to go to the movie theater anymore. So I need a home theater, and swimming pools, we need our own pool, that all of that stuff is kind of, softened a little bit now that we've gotten back to a reality. But the fact that people are still working from home, maybe all of us included, I know me included, people, have the need for space, as Pete said, whether it's 1 home office, 2 home offices, or whatever. That's really, I think, the people working from home, and how the worldwide economy has changed to people being able to work from home is really going to be the long-lasting effect of COVID.
Yeah,
no doubt. I couldn't agree with those 2 guys more. The only thing I would add to it is we broke through some price barriers that we never thought we would break through during COVID. I can just think of specific neighborhoods in our market where we said, okay, that is a $350,000 house, and now it's a $500,000 house, and we think nothing about it. There are these mental barriers. There was homes that were $700,000 houses that are now 1.1. And it was like we just shook our head at it, saying there's no way that will ever happen in our lifetime. And then it happened in about 6 months or a year. That's just like one of the other things that COVID did that I was really shocked at. And it didn't fall off either. I mean, our prices are still strong. With inventory low, you would think in most cases when you have that spike that it's going to hit and it's coming right back. Well, we're just not feeling it. We feel like the market's still strong.
And one thing I'll add too, in this area, I would say location too, where I experienced it and I think it's the working from home, where we had clients that were looking in the Aldi Ashburn area. And we hit the point of where in certain pockets where there were a lot of bidding wars earlier in the spring, they were paying just as much as not a comparable house, but somewhat close in Vienna or Oakton. And I started to think about it. I was like, wow, the whole working from home thing's now really taking a hold, because the further out areas are becoming, almost just as attractive, because having to be close to DC, that sort of must for a lot of people is lessening a little bit. So with us, I just took buyers out to Purcellville and Leesburg, and they're looking in, Greg, you probably laugh when you hear this, but, they're looking 1.1 to 1.4 and we can't find them a house. Because there's just so little out there, and they are people that are relocating and want to be in the area, but they would have been probably looking in Reston, Vienna, Oakton, if they had a job in DC. Now they're remote, so they can come down and, but the amount of inventory in these areas, we've already talked about it, but is just amazing.
Yeah, supply and demand just keeps pushing the prices up. The only thing that I'm seeing that is going against that is when you start to get really high up in the price ranges, say 2 million plus for Eastern Loudoun right now, I'm sensing is definitely starting to push back down a little bit. In fact, there's four homes in my neighborhood that are in that price point, and they're all moving slow. Unfortunately, 2 of them are my listings. So, I'd say anything below 1.5 is just as hot as it can be. And every day I'm seeing prices that just make me scratch my head and go, really?
Yeah.
So it's still happening for sure.
We toured a few, and that's what I was with those buyers, and we toured a few, and there was no way we were going to, make an offer just because they didn't present themselves really well or whatever. And I got feedback from the agent. Then 10 minutes later, I got an alert that said it went under contract.
Right.
So,
no question about it.
It's probably all relative though, right, Greg? You say they've been sitting on the market. Think a few years back on a $2 million, $3 million listing, I might say for the amount of money I'm going to put in this property, we're going to sign a year contract. We're going to sign a year listing on this. And I don't know, it just seems like a long time on the market's relative right now, probably, isn't it?
Well, it is. We'll see how long it turns out to be, right?
Good luck. We want you to get it. We want you to get those done. So
you will.
It's weird. One thing I noticed is that I always thought, we'll move out to Vienna, Oakton. When did Vienna get as expensive as Arlington? When did that happen? You can't buy a house in Vienna under $1 million. So I thought Vienna would be, a couple $100,000 lower than Arlington, right? No, Vienna is like Arlington now. When did that happen?
That whole, I think the McLean sort of south along there just sort of leveled off. And it's almost like if you're inside the Beltway, if you're east of Reston, it's almost all kind of blended together in terms of pricing. Because I agree with you, and it's also the type of house.
Yeah.
Because because it was funny. I was looking for you, and I'd see this really, really old townhouse in Vienna or Oakton, and be like, okay, they're probably gonna have to put X amount into it, and it was $1 million. But it was.
Yeah, the only house I saw in Fairfax was that one townhouse we saw in Fairfax off
50.
Yeah, right there. What's that intersection? It's 50 and was it right there by Chantilly High School? I can't think of that. It was only kind of like loud and like listing, like a luxurious townhouse. But anyway, guys, this has been great. Last question for you. What do you see 10 years from now for realtors and also for consumers in the real estate market? I mean, things have changed so quickly to where we are now. I can't even believe where it is now, how it changed in the last 15 years since the last time I bought and sold. But what about 10 years? What do you guys see down the road? Any predictions?
In terms of our jobs?
Your job, but also for consumers or different technologies or how the industry is going to evolve.
It'll be interesting because I remember way back when I had the lit support business, I was on Greensboro Drive in Tyson's, and that was around 2004, 2005, when everyone thought how you couldn't get a house anymore. All the houses had been built and the market was crazy. And there are all these companies saying like, we'll assist to sell and we'll sell your house for you, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone said realtors are going to go out of business. I just personally think that you always need an expert on your side. I think that what might happen is whether it's through teams or just, I think the amount of realtors might go down a little bit, but I think like always, the experts will rise to the top. I think what will take that away is a buyer and a seller engaging each other directly, but working with buyers and sellers every day, we know that we're a very necessary buffer there to sort of manage things and keep things going on the right track. I think lastly, I'll say, I think it's the older people like us being open to embracing new technology. I think the realtors that will suffer will be the ones who just see things changing and don't adjust.
We don't do this enough in our lives, buy and sell houses,
right,
to have the expertise when that moment comes. Some people do it by once or twice their whole lives. So
and also, you're not buying a car that you can trade in if you don't like it. You're buying a place to live. And so that sort of makes us more professional and less commodity. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I think we probably have one of the biggest decisions that's going to happen in the real estate industry sitting on the Supreme Court steps right now. And what could happen is, really it just has to do with how realtors will be compensated for transactions. And we've already seen it with some of our MLSs where we always went into it saying, and some companies said it wrong, and that's what caused the problem, but the seller pays the commission. And I would expect in the future that we're probably going to see the buyers paying their commission and the sellers paying their commission. I may be going on a limb by saying that, but I feel like that's probably where the ruling is going to fall. And because of that, it'll change things. I mean, right when I got started in the business, we started having buyer brokerage. That was a big change to our industry. We didn't have buyer brokerage right when I was getting into this, and it evolved very quickly. So I'll tell you, Julian, I don't know where that's going to go, but I do think that you're going to see the mentality of the consumer, of all the people that we work with out there, change, and we're going to have to change with that. And I'm curious where Pete and Greg fall on that, because I think it's one of the biggest things that's going to happen in our industry, probably that's happened in the last 20 years.
When you switch it over to buyer paying, that's going to change a lot of things, because that's.
Do you think it'll happen? Do you think, Pete, that it's going to? I mean, we're seeing some states already do it. Do you think?
I think there's a good likelihood of doing it, and I just think it's going to be a huge challenge, because it's going to cause another source of friction. You know what I mean? You're going to be negotiating with someone how much they're going to pay when you're representing them, whereas right now it's a little more simplistic. But yeah, I think you bring up a great point about that factoring into the future. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if I was a betting man, I would say that it will happen at some point. It almost sort of makes sense if you think about it, that representation would be compensated on both sides of the table. So I definitely think it will happen at some point. And when it does happen, I think that there will be a little bit of a bump in the road. Is that bump a 6-month, a 12-month, or a 24-month? Probably somewhere, in that range. But at the end of the day, I think that, the importance of representation, whether it's the buyer side or the seller side, is still going to be there. And and when you can throw out data like selling a home for 20% above the market, and you know, and other data points of why representation is so important. You know, it's like, Julian, you can take it back to the law industry. It's like, you know, if lawyers all went away, will that ever happen? You know, I don't think so, because representation and is super important in a lot of industry. And you know, AI will try to eliminate some people. I could see it eliminating. I could see it eliminating the mortgage industry at some point.
Pretty close right now, right, Greg? With credit scores, I mean, they're creeping into it already. You're right.
Right. So you know, and maybe even the title industry at some point. You know, AI is a fascinating thing, and you know, unfortunately, I don't necessarily think that it's a good thing for, you know, for the long haul. I think the ability to eliminate people is not a good thing. So, you know, I'd like to be optimistic about the real estate industry and about, you know, the industries that surround it. Only time will tell. Obviously, there's already business models out there right now that exist that eliminate everybody and are trying to eliminate everybody. But I don't know that they're going to take hold, you know, in the near future.
It's going to have an interesting impact on price, I think, if they're both negotiating both sides. And I think for on the buyer side, it's generally a little harder to show your value on the buyer side because, you know, you say, okay, I've had 30 buyer transactions, and it's a little easier to show I've sold this house at this price in this many days, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, yeah, there will be some disruption with it. I would like to think that if it happens and then when all the smoke clears, the professionals will still be there. That's what I always tell my team and, you know, how we go about it. But, you know, these days you never know.
That's like the most interesting aspect of your guys' jobs, I think. One of the most interesting aspects of the job is price. Now, you would think when you're trying to sell a house, it'd be easy to arrive at a price. You know, you look at what's selling in the neighborhood, you go inside, you see kind of what the upgrades are. You know, how hard could it be? But there's such a psychological thing about price. You know, if you come in a little bit low, you get more bodies in there to look at it. You're trying to bid that thing up, get a little bit of leverage, and get higher than list price. If you go up too high, it may sit a little bit in this market, get a little bit stale, then all of a sudden people start questioning it. The house it's still a nice house. It's still in Arlington or wherever it is, but all of a sudden people question the house because you price it a little bit too high. The whole thing's a little bit psychological and nonsensical to me, but that is like one of the aspects of real estate that I find fascinating. You know, Pete and I, you know, we used to go to, you know, the racetrack to the horses. It's the same thing.
Totally.
Owners put horses in different races, and when they put them in real cheap races, they win the race. Someone comes in, they claim the horse, but that is like the most safe way to play the game because you win a lot of races. You don't eat a lot of horses. You're not the last person to own it, and you move your stock. If you keep them up too high, you know they never win, and then when you try to drop them gradually, they don't win, and they eventually get sour. And I realized this pricing thing, it's just like the horses, so the real estate market. I find that one of the most fascinating aspects, and then one of the most important uses of the realtor is the price point.
I also think that's another COVID legacy is what I saw happen was if a house sat a week or two, something was wrong with it. It was like nothing I've ever seen where, you know, if in the crazy market, and buyers wouldn't want it, you know, because, and so I would tell them, I'd be like, the only flaw in this house is it was overpriced, but that is how it was because everything would go on the market Tuesday. Latest it would be under contract was Monday if they waited for offers. And I've never been in a market where overpricing it is such a challenge. It's such a bad move, for lack of a better phrase, because yeah, if one sits through 6 days, my buyers would just tell me, they're like, 123 Main Street's still out there. Must be something wrong with it. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it. It was just inappropriately priced.
It's the only thing you can do wrong, isn't it? Because if you underprice it, the market's going to determine what it goes for. And if anything, it might even go for more than if you priced it right. You know, it's bizarre what happened in COVID with pricing. You're absolutely right. And Julian, let me know when we're going to Colonial Downs. I think I need
Big
that
field.
insight right there. That's the stuff that I don't get at the track. So
Big fields there.
We'll meet there. Pete and I love to go. We'll grab Greg and we'll all meet there at some point. New Kent. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Greg, what about you? What about any comments about price?
I mean, pricing strategy is a part of every market. I don't know. We're gonna, ever see the doldrums of the old markets that we experienced back when, homes, took a long time to sell, and some of them didn't. Some of them were on the market for a year, and then you got to the end of the year and you had a years long listing period, and it didn't sell. So I don't know that we're gonna see that anytime. In our lifetime, but every market is different, every price point is different, and there's strategies that are involved, in pricing a home, and once again, it kind of goes back to the experience of the agent, and when it comes to having a sound strategy that you can defend. Having a sound strategy that in this market equates to multiple offers the first weekend, and then having a sound strategy that guarantees the maximum return on the investment to the seller. There's strategy involved in all of that, and that's the market that we're in right now for sure.
And Mike, you with the luxury market, but you cover a vast area. So obviously you're going to have some areas where real estate is not going to move briskly. Just there's not a lot of folks coming in and out of Orange County, but they got beautiful houses there. But you can't really price aggressively in Orange County, right? Like if you have a beautiful 20-acre lot, a beautiful house, 1.5 million or so, just because you want to move it, you can't put it at 1.3 if it's worth more, just because you have you're going to have a little bit low turnover because of the area, right?
Yeah, we just talked about this actually in Charlottesville, and you've got those outlying areas there that have become so popular. But Orange County, Greene County, Louisa County, some of those ones that Goochland for that matter too, that are just kind of on the fringe. But then we have some that pop, and it's a real strange dynamic because like Greene County, which going up 29 headed your way, it's one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And then we look at it right next to it's Orange County, and it doesn't have the same level of growth. But, it really comes down to local governments and what they're doing to grow those specific micro markets. And we're finding some of them just do a lot better job at it than others. Some of them don't want it. But if there is a pattern that, I have to now get into trying to track data analytics and patterns and things like that, even on a little bit bigger level or bigger scale, we're finding, of course, as you move out from the hub, when you start moving away, those prices, days on market, prices go down a little bit, days on market go up. And we're really starting to see days on market in some of the outlying counties start to creep up or start to get kind of normal again, where even the people that aren't saying like we always have, what's wrong with that house? It was on the market for 2 weeks and we used to immediately just go, that's a problem. There's something wrong with that house. Now that's kind of getting normal, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I even smile when I say that because we're still selling it in 3 weeks. It's like it's still happening. It's just that, the mentality's changing. And thank goodness it is, because I think we're starting to get maybe a little bit closer to balance. And maybe that'll creep back into some of our cities or sort of the hubs here in the future, because I think we need it. I think we need to get back into equilibrium a little bit.
That is so fascinating what you said about Greene County. So when I was at UVA, Orange County was much more wealthy than Greene. Orange had those beautiful farms. Woodbury Forest is there. It was a very wealthy county and area of Orange, whereas Greene County was, I don't want to say redneck, but Greene County they had the moonshine back in the hills. It was not an upscale place at all. It's fascinating to me that Greene County has outpaced Orange County. You would have never thought.
Well, I've got an office in Greene County, so don't talk too bad about Greene County right here. I got some really good agents in Greene County.
Okay, I know. It's surprising because Orange County was much wealthier than Greene when I was at UVA.
For example, I'll tell you, Greene County they've got a huge planned unit development they're getting ready to bust loose on coming up here in the next, I think, 12 months. And it's going to put Greene County on the map. And there's already growth there. But with that on top of it, it's something, that county wants it and they're investing in it. They're, as Greg said, they're spending money to make money, and they're going to do well with it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Mike, you made a great point when you just mentioned the 3 weeks. And that's one thing everyone asks me about the market now, where prices don't seem to be varying that much, but buyers are going and they're not getting in those bidding wars the first week or two, and they're seeing, oh, it didn't go under contract, but then there's nothing else to buy. So then they go back to those houses. So they go through, and it probably speaks to a little bit of an unhealthy market, because I think some buyers are buying houses they don't love, where they'll go that first week, they won't make an offer because there are 2 or 3 things wrong with it. They'll tour the next weekend, and then they'll come to that harsh realization of there's nothing here. And then they'll go back the third week, and then they'll say, okay, well, that one that we didn't love, maybe we can do some of our own renovations, et cetera, et cetera. So I think your 3-week comment was right on target, where a lot of things are selling in that window, just not, it's gone like 3 days to 3 weeks is what I tell some clients.
Yeah,
No doubt.
and it's our job to educate the buyers that, hey, this is normal.
Yes.
And this is a good thing, that you've got an opportunity to see a house 2 or maybe 3 times to really feel good about the decision, as opposed to, you got 15 minutes to see this place before the next showing comes in. If you don't write an offer tonight, you don't even have a shot in the dark at this place. That's unhealthy. I think we'd all agree that getting back to, 2 or 3 weeks is, I mean, the National Association of Realtors for many, many years, and they might still have this number in mind. And the number was 6 months of inventory as a balanced real estate market.
Yeah.
Not a seller's market, not a buyer's market. So, that's 180 days on the market. We haven't seen homes on the market for 180 days in, 10 years, it's more like 180 hours or 18 hours or 1.8 hours, so, I like to hear stories of things, normalizing a little bit. It can be tough. It can be tricky, especially when you're, when you're knee deep in it, and you're trying to price a home in an area that's transitioning. And, a year ago would have been off the shelf in the first weekend, but now it might be 4 or 5 months. And that's a big difference. To go that drastic in a 12-month cycle. And if you're right in the middle of it, trying to price properties, and your sellers are thinking, of last year's numbers and last year's market, that can be real tricky and real tough at times to navigate your way through it, because in a lot of cases, there's not enough data out there to actually guide your clients through the changes in the market.
Hey, Greg, wouldn't you rather show your client a house 3 times than have them back out at the last minute? I mean, it's like a no-brainer answer all day, and I think that's when I talk about getting to normal. We all did that. We all had to show a house. It was like we'd show it and we'd go back to the one they liked. And it's like, you're so right. Now we can't even have time to go back, and it's putting so much pressure. I've said the temperature of the market is higher than it's been in a long time. It's like everything's just hot right now. And because of it, it makes a lot of decisions just not make sense on the buyer side. So,
yeah.
It also makes it tougher on the real estate side. I mean, you guys know this. It makes it tougher on the real estate side too. You got 10 or 15 offers in. You don't know which one's genuine. You don't know which one, they have 4 other offers out there, and they're just going to bail on the HOA docs. It just makes everyone less comfortable.
Yeah. I feel like if there wasn't pressure to come in a little bit lower, I think it would behoove us all. It would make the market so much more. You could take your time and look at some houses, and not have to offer the first weekend if you're afraid of losing it. And I mean, that's the way it is Arlington under a certain price, because everyone prices the same way. It's interesting. There's a house not too far away from here. I don't want to give them up, but they came in, their price point was really high. I was like, wow, that's aggressive. I mean, that's really high. And, I was dying to know what it went for. And they actually got the price when it was sold. And I was like, wow, they thread that needle, and so sometimes it works, but I thought it would fall, but they actually got that price. So
all it takes is one.
Yeah.
All it takes is that one buyer.
Yeah, it's a different strategy, right? It's a strategy of thinking that what the max that the market will produce, and it's a bit of a roll of the dice for sure, as opposed to the more common strategy of, you know, pricing it more realistic, or even a hair below realistic in order to generate multiple offers, and in order for the market to boost it up to what the market says the value of the property is.
I think a little bit of that is the risk profile of the seller. If you have deep pockets and you're not in a hurry, you can take your time. You're gonna find a buyer. But if you got kids, like we did, we had kids going to school. We had to, find a place to live. So that it was a little bit more important for us to sell. But if you have 6 months to sell and you don't really care that much about the money, you want to get your price. You don't care about the short term. Maybe you price it a little higher, a little bit higher.
That's a great point that I'm dealing with right now is with buyers is the blindness of knowing what the seller's situation is. We don't, because in this market now, if a place sits, they want to go 100 grand below, and so you tell them, you're like, well, that person could hold on to their home for 2 years. And then, instead of absorbing that $100,000 hit, but we don't know if that person is more motivated or less motivated. And sometimes we always try to get the other realtor to tell us. And then, so I think it's all situational. And that's one of the hardest parts of our job is it's hard to standardize everything because every little situation is different.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, that's what makes it fun and challenging.
Yeah, never boring.
Yeah. And you guys have a lot in the line because you're making advice. You are giving advice that means could mean $100,000 to a seller buyer. That is a huge amount of money to a lot of people. And, this is a day in your lives. This is what you guys do. You probably don't feel tons of pressure, not really pressured by it anymore, a little bit immune to it. But
I do.
What's that?
It's one of the biggest challenges. I think we probably all have felt it is the more you care about being a realtor, the more stressful it is, because we're on our client's side and we're absorbing. And that's one of the biggest, I'd like to think in the last 5 or 6 years was managing all that caring, but having an even keel. I mean, that's one thing, Mike, I've just met you, but that's one thing I've always told people about Greg is he's just even keeled, and I think that's really, really important because that rubs off on clients and that makes them feel either more stressed or less stressed. And when you're composed and, you're guiding them through things and you're showing all this patience, it really, really helps them achieve their goals.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Well said.
Yeah. So look, guys, this has been great. I mean, I've done a lot of these panels and I've done a lot of interviews. This is one of my favorites. You guys were fantastic. Hopefully you guys, awesome. You guys will join me again. I'm sure there'll be some real estate topics in the next 6 months or so. Maybe we can do this again. I really enjoy it. It was fun and you guys are great. So yeah, just thanks again. I'll leave your contact information. If people get in touch with you, I think you guys, people who are listening would do very well to have these guys working for them. These are great.
Mike, now I know who to send Williamsburg referrals to.
We'll send them your way too. I love it. We'll go both ways on that. So
yeah.
And many thanks for the basketball plug, Julian. That was very sweet of you.
Well, Greg, you were a good basketball player.
Well, I was disappointed when the coaches at Robinson made me choose between basketball and soccer because really, I used to tell people all the time that basketball was my favorite sport.
Yeah, you were a good shooter. You were a good shooter.
I love the game, but unfortunately, sometimes things get in the way.
Soccer was always a little bit of a niche in that soccer was a little bit different back then. And you guys it was a very niche sport back then. And you guys played your little hacky sack in the halls. You guys were just different, and it's interesting because when I interview these athletes, they'll tell me things like, yeah, if we lost to them in football, like Mark Cox, Vanadale, if we lost to Robinson in football, we get him back in basketball. If we lost to him in basketball, we get him back in baseball. Soccer's different. Soccer, you guys were your own island. All like Tommy Nicholson, all the guy, Aaron Gazemka. Aaron was a good wrestler. Tommy was a good football player, but they all ended up specializing in soccer, which was kind of before the day of specialization. I mean, people weren't specializing back then, but soccer players, you guys were your own little island back then.
The golden era.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Gonna
I think
play-
everybody was on a travel team at some point playing soccer if you lived up in Fairfax County. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just what you did. If you when it was your off season, you played soccer. I mean, it was just it. But I remember just like Greg at some point, and in my case, it was Coach McKegg said, you got to decide if you're playing basketball or you're playing something else. And it was just kind of like there was no choice with my high school coaches. You know him well, Julian.
Mike, Mike, what was your other sport? I don't remember your other sport.
I mean, growing up, I played baseball, basketball, soccer. I mean, anything my parents would put me in, it was like we did it all. My brother and I. We were just kind of the normal Fairfax County kids that we did that. Tried my hand at football for a little while, then realized being 160 pounds does not work well on the football field.
Yeah, tell me about it. Mike, I really enjoyed coaching. I'm trying to think. You were with Dermia and
St. Stephen's Summer League. I think you had us, didn't you?
Yeah, we played great. Who was a kid that transferred in? The Army kid that transferred in. He was a good player his senior year.
Jarvis Toller.
Yes, we had a nice team, but you guys' personalities were all so strong. I mean, it was a really good team, and you guys tried hard. You loved to play, but your personalities kind of butt heads sometimes. It was weird. I felt like I loved the team. You guys were good kids, good players, but I felt like we could have done even better than we did.
Oh, absolutely. And we used to really get together and all line up real well when we played TC Williams too, because it seemed like that usually would get a little out of control. I mean, I can tell you, we all knew those guys so well. And it was like when Robinson came to TC or TC came to Robinson, I still remember those games specifically because it was some good matchups that we had with them. They usually got the best of us, but
yes,
we
they
let them
did.
feel it.
With basketball, I did. But, one of the best things about doing this local podcast is I talked to so many players that I played against, like Tommy Hammerker, Frank Smith, Darren Dimitris. These guys, we didn't know each other that well because we were always competitive. I mean, I was always guarding them, they were guarding me. We liked each other, but we were like friends off the court. So it's been great reconnecting with all these people that I knew and I respected them, but I used to know them well. And, to sit down and talk, hour and a half and just kind of getting their life story. It's a joy. I really enjoy it a lot. The people that we competed against and people I played with. One guy I want to get, Greg will know this guy real well, is Joel Dempsey. Joel's a guy that I went to, Joel and I went to school together from third grade through middle school, of course, high school, through undergrad, and also law school. We were together from third grade through law school. We played football and basketball together, and we were never close friends. Joel was kind of a shy guy, great guy. But
great guy.
Great guy. Remember he used to be on those unicycles, Greg?
I was just going to say, and most people don't know that he was an expert unicycle rider at his size was like pretty crazy.
He was on a 30-foot or whatever. I don't know. It was a 30, but it was crazy.
Julian, you and Joel used to officiate my youth league basketball games for Braddock Road Youth Club. I can remember walking in, I always knew you kind of had my number because I knew you and you'd always like to just get a little rise out of me on some things, I think. But you're a pretty good official back in your day too.
I was okay, Mike, but you're a very opinionated young man.
You think?
You were never afraid to give your opinion. You're a very smart kid. You're never afraid to give your opinion about anything, but a good player.
That's a nice way to say it. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm sure you give great advice to clients too. So, but anyway, guys, I kept you way too long. This has been great, but hopefully, and Mike, thanks for jumping in at the last moment. I should have thought you at the beginning. We're trying to get a Nova thing, but you actually brought an incredible perspective. And maybe, next time we can talk more about beach properties and things that you experience that these guys probably don't do a lot of. But anyway, guys, I just want to thank you again for doing this. Hopefully we can do it again soon. And hopefully you'll share this with your network.
Awesome. Thanks
for doing what you do, Julian. It's great.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Great.
All right, guys, have a good evening.
Guys.
We'll see you.